The North, an icy desert, endless, merciless, and indifferent to human hopes and suffering. Here time freezes along with the winds, and the sky itself seems closer to the earth, as if it wants to crush travelers with its weight. The Arctic is not just a cold space on the map, it is a living element, ancient and treacherous, which does not forgive mistakes and rarely lets go of those who dare to set foot on its territory. It is here, among the hummocks and endless ice, that many secrets are hidden, whispered by sailors. Some speak of ghostly ships that have drifted for centuries, bearing the mark of a curse. Others say that the North itself jealously guards its secrets, and anyone who tries to wrest them by force disappears without a trace. But there are stories that frighten even seasoned explorers, stories of real ships whose crews seem to have evaporated into the frosty air, leaving behind only the creaking of masts and icy silence. These ships have become legends, and not only because of their tragic fate. They are spoken of as cursed. Their disappearances cannot be explained by cold or storms alone. There are too many strange coincidences, too many matching details. The Arctic Ocean is a graveyard not only of bodies but also of hopes. Where man has sought discovery and glory, the Arctic has left only empty decks, faded sails, and a mystery that still terrifies centuries later. Today I will tell you about the most terrible and mystical stories connected with the cursed ships of the Arctic, about the ships that disappeared in the ice and returned without a crew, about the ghosts that wandered their decks, about the people who went to the North full of determination and became only part of the eternal, icy legend. Imagine, it's night. The darkness presses on your eyes, and somewhere in the distance, among the hummocks and ice floes, you can hear the creaking of a mast. There are no people, no sounds of life, only the cold, the wind, and the black silhouette of a ship slowly sliding through the ice. You get closer, your heart beats faster and faster. But the deck is empty. The ropes are hanging, the sails are torn, the crew's things are in place, but the people are gone, as if they dissolved into thin air. This is not fiction. There are dozens of such stories, but the most famous and frightening of them are the stories of Franklin's expedition, the mysterious Baychimo, the tragic fate of Karluk, and the ghostly Jeannette. Each of them is shrouded in a fog of mysticism, and even today, in the 21st century, when science seems to be able to explain everything, these secrets continue to live. Some believe that the ships have become victims of the Arctic's evil will, as if the elements themselves do not tolerate strangers and destroy them. Others believe that it is due to an ancient curse that the peoples of the North knew about. And some are even sure that these disappearances are the result of the intervention of something otherworldly. But is it true? Let's sail into the icy waters together. Let me be your guide to a world where the line between reality and mysticism is blurred, where every icy sail can whisper a story of doom and fear, and every ghostly silhouette on the horizon is a reminder that the North does not let go of its victims. And the deeper we delve into these stories, the more we get the sense that the Arctic is more than just a cold region of the Earth. It is a living, ancient creature that can wait, can take revenge, and can keep secrets better than any wall. Mid-19th century. The British Empire is at the height of its power. Sailors wear their uniforms with pride, and each new voyage to unknown lands becomes a matter of honor and glory. But the most coveted goal for sailors of that time was the Northwest Passage, a route through the Arctic that was supposed to connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. This route promised riches, power, and eternal glory. In 1845, Sir John Franklin, an experienced navigator and polar explorer, sets out on an expedition on two ships, the HMS Terror and the HMS Erebus. Both ships were equipped with the latest technology of the time, an iron hull, steam engines, food for several years, even libraries and musical instruments for the officers. It seemed that nothing could go wrong, but from the very beginning, a shadow seemed to hang over the expedition. The local Eskimos warned the English, the Arctic does not like strangers. Too often they saw how the icy wasteland took lives, and too often they said that these lands were inhabited by spirits that did not tolerate human greed. The English only smiled in response, considering the stories of savages superstitious. The ships sailed into the icy unknown, and No one saw them again. A year passed, then 2, then 3. In London, they hoped that the expedition had been delayed, but soon hope turned to anxiety, and anxiety to despair. A search began, the largest in the 19th century, but for a long time, without result. And only decades later, the wrecks of the ships began to appear on the surface of history, as if the Arctic itself had decided to remind the world of its curse. Both ships were found only in the 21st century, buried underwater off the coast of Canada. But even more terrifying were the discoveries made earlier. The bodies of the crew members, frozen, distorted, some with signs of cannibalism. Yes, researchers have found evidence that Franklin's sailors ate each other in an attempt to survive. But what drove them to do this? Was it just the cold and hunger? Or was it the madness that the Arctic was slowly weaving into their souls? The Eskimos told strange stories. They saw the ghosts of sailors wandering on the ice, heard their cries in the blizzard. Some said that the ships themselves, Terror and Erebus, became alive, having acquired their own spirit, which did not let go of the crew until the latter went crazy. And if you believe the legends, to this day in those places, you can sometimes see the silhouettes of two masts drifting among the ice and hear the distant ringing of a ship's bell. The beginning of the 20th century, a new generation of explorers enters the arena, eager to prove that man can conquer the Arctic. In 1913, a Canadian expedition set out for the northern shores of Alaska on the ship Karluk. But the ship was poorly prepared. Within a few weeks, it was trapped in ice. The sailors were trapped in a deadly trap. The ship drifted along with the ice fields, and all around was an endless white void. Soon the ice began to press on the hull, and Karluk slowly sank under the water, taking with it the hopes of the expedition. People had to get out onto the ice. A long and painful struggle for survival began. Cold, illness, hunger, all this became part of their daily life. But something even more terrible was that they began to hear strange sounds. At first it seemed like footsteps outside the camp, then quiet voices calling by name. In the blizzard, the sailors saw figures moving at the edge of visibility. But when they tried to get closer, there was no one there. Several members of the expedition went mad. One of them claimed to have seen the ship itself, drifting in the distance, with lanterns lit and silhouettes on the deck. But how was this possible if the Karluk was already resting on the bottom? Only a part of the team survived until the rescue, but the memories of those who returned were full of nightmares. They could not forget the strange voices that called them from the blizzard, and that look. The look of someone's eyes in the darkness that they felt on themselves every night. Since then, sailors of the northern seas have said, the Arctic can create illusions. It lures a person with visions, promises warmth and salvation, and then takes his soul. And Karluk became just one of many proofs that the North plays with people like a cat with its prey. 1931. The world has long since mastered radio and automobiles, but the northern seas remain almost untouched. The steamship Baychimo was transporting cargo and furs along the shores of Chukotka, moving through icy waters. But fate decided to play a cruel joke on him. The ship got stuck in an ice trap. The crew, realizing that it was impossible to bring the ship back to life, evacuated, taking valuable property, and left the ship to the mercy of fate. And then the strangest thing began. A few days later, the Baychimo was sighted again, drifting among the ice as if no one had ever left its deck. Months and years later, local hunters and explorers saw the vessel, sometimes with lanterns lit, sometimes without them. But it always appeared where, logically, it should not have been. Legends say that Baychimo became a living ghost, an eternal drifting ship that could not be carried away from the northern ice. Sailors saw it and heard the creaking of its masts in a blizzard, and then it disappeared, leaving only fog and icy wind. Some claimed to hear voices calling their name, as if the ship was demanding the return of the crew. In fact, scientists explain the phenomenon simply. Ice drift and winds could carry the ship over long distances, and when abandoned, it sometimes reappeared on the surface. But for those who saw it in reality, rational explanations mean little. Baychimo has become a symbol of northern mysticism, a ghost of the Arctic that lives by its own laws. 1879. The American frigate USS Jeannette sets out on a polar voyage under the command of George DeLong. The expedition is looking for the mythical open polar sea, believing that these waters are ice-free and the path to the North Pole will be easy. But the reality was harsh. Within a few weeks, Jeannette was trapped in ice, and the ice was slowly crushing the hull. The ship was drifting, and the crew knew it was nearly impossible to escape. When the ship finally broke apart, the crew found themselves floating on ice in the middle of nowhere. The survival saga began. Cold, hunger, disease. The sailors walked to the unknown land, many died, and those who survived returned with stories of ghostly visions on the ice, of ships that should not have been there, of figures moving in the fog that disappeared as they approached. Legend has it that Jeannette became part of the northern spirit of the ice. Even decades after the tragedy, sailors said they saw her silhouette drifting in the cold darkness. It was as if the ship wanted to remind humanity. The North never forgives frivolity and vanity. Of course, all of this can be explained by science. Mirages, known as fata morgana, create distortions that make you see ships where there are none. Ice drift carries the ship hundreds of kilometers, sometimes returning it to the same paths. But the very reality of these phenomena only enhances the feeling of mysticism. When you stand on an icy plain and see the silhouette of a ship that seemed to have left this world decades ago, rational explanations lose their power in the face of the cold beauty and horror of the Arctic. All these stories, Franklin, Karluk, Baychimo, Jeannette, are not just chronicles of shipwrecks. They are evidence that the North is a living space that watches, tests, and sometimes takes revenge. Each ship left without a crew or drifting among the ice has become part of a legend. It is as if the Arctic preserves the souls of sailors, weaving them into an eternal cycle of cold, fog, and emptiness. When the wind howls across the ice fields and the blizzard covers the horizon, it seems as if the elements themselves are whispering to you, "You are a stranger here. You have broken my rules." Every creaking mast tree, every sail torn by the icy wind, every strange silhouette on the horizon is a reminder that man is always only a guest in this world. Many explorers have tried to penetrate these mysteries. They have drawn maps, used the latest technology, tried to explain the phenomena with science. But anyone who has stayed long enough has realized that rational explanations cannot convey the sense of horror that comes from seeing a drifting ship that seemed to have sunk into oblivion centuries ago. Arctic legends unite people of different eras and nationalities. Englishmen, Canadians, Americans. Everyone who dared to enter the icy labyrinth encountered the inexplicable. And almost always the consequences were the same. Disappearances, strange visions, cold that penetrates not only the body, but also the soul. Today, when technology allows us to explore polar regions more safely, stories about cursed ships seem like a fairy tale. But once you reach the icy desert, the legend comes to life. You hear the creaking of masts, the whisper of the wind, the cries that seem to call your name. And at that moment, you understand that the Arctic is not just geography, it is a living organism that knows everything about you. Every ship that remains forever in the ice, every silhouette in the fog, every missing sailor is part of the great mystical symphony of the North. A symphony that continues for centuries, slowly weaving new stories, new names, new secrets into its patterns. And while someone is trying to solve the riddles, the Arctic remains the same. Cold, endless, alive, and scary. You feel it when you look at photographs of drifting ships, at old maps, at a blizzard obscuring the icy horizon. It seems that in an instant, they will come to life. The mast will bend, the sails will flutter, and the ghosts of the vanished crews will walk the decks again, as if time had never passed. And herein lies the essence. The Arctic does not preserve only ice and snow. It preserves memory, the memory of those who dared to challenge the elements and of those who remain forever in its embrace. Each ship is not just an object, it is a character, full of its own life, its own history, and its own curse. When you look at the vast icy expanses of the Arctic, it is impossible to escape the feeling that there is something more living there than just cold and ice. Every snowstorm, every drifting iceberg, Every foggy veil is like the breath of the North itself, watching, waiting, and choosing its victims. The cursed ships we remember today are not just stories of the past. They are a reminder that there are forces beyond human control that keep their secrets and triumph over vanity and pride. We have sailed through icy waters with Franklin and his terror, drifted with Carluck, watched the ghostly Baychimo, and lived through the tragedy of Jeannette. And in each of these stories, you feel the same thing. The Arctic is a living, breathing organism where past, present, and future are intertwined in a cold dance of ice and wind. Every ship left in the ice, every name that has disappeared, is a voice that whispers that man is only a guest in this icy wasteland, and its patience should not be tested. But there is another lesson. These stories reveal the beauty of human determination, the desire to discover, and the fearlessness of the unknown. Even in the face of adversity and mortal danger, people pursued their goals, explored, dreamed, and sometimes paid the ultimate price for it. The Arctic has left us not only tragedy, but also eternal inspiration. It teaches us to respect the elements, listen to the world around us, and appreciate every moment of life. And if you ever find yourself in an icy wilderness, amidst a blizzard and hummocks, listen. Perhaps you will hear the creaking of masts, the voice of a sailor's ghost, or the soft ringing of a ship's bell. Perhaps you will feel the cold that penetrates your very soul, and you will understand. The Arctic is still alive. It preserves the memory of its victims and remains an eternal testimony to the fact that man is only a part of a great, incomprehensible mystery. Now that you have listened to this story to the end, I want you to think, what other secrets does the North hide? What other ships are drifting in the ice, and their crews have forever become part of the mystical labyrinth of the Arctic? The world is full of the unknown, and every mystery, every disappearance, reminds us that not everything in this world is subject to reason. If you found this interesting, if you felt the cold and anxiety of these stories, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Here we continue to explore the most mystical, mysterious, and little-known facts of history. Like if you like this story and leave a comment, tell us which story seemed the most creepy to you, which Arctic ship struck your imagination the most. Together we will dive into the world of mysteries and mysticism, explore forgotten archives and revive stories that others consider long gone. Remember, history is not only events and dates, it is souls, secrets, and legends that live in our thoughts and imagination. And when you close this video and look at the world around you, remember, somewhere out there, among the ice and fog, there is a ship that should never have existed. And maybe it is waiting for you to whisper a story that no one else will hear. The Arctic holds its secrets, but now some of these secrets have been revealed to you. And only your determination determines how many more stories we will uncover together.